This Kevin Samuels situation, can we really ask this question in all seriousness? Everything that has to do with social media, everything that has to do with how information is transferred amongst people through these different social networks, are we really surprised that a guy who decided to build a career, a platform, he decided to stoke the emotions of the United States public, are we really surprised that he was able to ascend to almost the top of the mountain in the YouTube world and get under people's skin? I mean, it's no surprise to me, and I'll tell you this, man. You know, I don't know enough about Kevin Samuels to really comment on him too deeply, but what I can tell you, based on a couple of, I just heard of his name for the first time 4 days ago. My wife brought it to my attention, and you know, the thing I can tell you about Kevin Samuels is he clearly, if you look at what the man is saying and how he's saying it, there's an underlying thing going on with him. You know, like I said, I don't want to comment on it too deeply because I don't know enough about him. I don't know enough about his situation to really give you an informed assessment. You know, because when you're a public figure and you put yourself out there and you got millions of followers on YouTube, you're a public figure that's open for criticism, you're open to be examined, you're open for all that. You're no longer a private citizen who deserves the rights of, you know, a person who doesn't put themselves out there like that. But, you know, when I hear the things he says, not that I disagree with everything he says, but when I hear sometimes the venom that he comes at certain women with, right? I think that there's an underlying reason as to why this is happening. I don't think it's just that he's some image counselor, whatever he calls himself, an image counselor. You know, and I'm not trying to talk bad on the dead or talk about them posthumously in a negative way. I'm just assessing. You know, every time I open YouTube, all I see is Kevin Samuels on the screen. So, you know, there has to be a reason why, and it's obvious that he was able to appeal in a negative way to the emotions of a lot of people, right? And when he sits there and he says these things so calmly, you know, and he shakes his ring at you, and he fixes his tie, and he does all these things, but in the same breath, he's talking down on African American women or any woman, not necessarily just African American women, because I heard a couple videos where he's just assessing women and he's just downing them, and he's just, you know, and he's doing it in a very nonchalant way. You know, he's trying to make it seem like he's just so comfortable doing this, but in actuality, I think his whole, you know, his thirst is when he wakes up in the morning, when he woke up in the morning, was to basically find women that he could take some of this frustration that is deep rooted inside of him for whatever reason. I don't know, but I'll post another video. I have an idea. I just don't want to say right now. I just need to investigate this guy a little bit further and find out exactly what's going on with him. But yeah, he's one of those figures in pop culture right now that you know, he really doesn't have a lot to say, honestly, on an intellectual level. He doesn't really have a lot to say intellectually, or he didn't have a lot to say intellectually. And it seems like in every other breath he used the term death, and he was, you know, telling people how they were going to die alone and how they were going to do this by themselves, and they weren't going to be able to ever have happiness based on his standards or based on what he wants the world to think is his standards. I don't even think that really was his standard. I think he wants you to believe a certain version of Kevin Samuels, or he wanted you to believe a certain version of Kevin Samuels, and he did it. He achieved that. He achieved that goal of you know, manipulating your perception of him. He made you feel as though he had some sort of credibility based on visually his suit, his tie, his background, his expensive things in his room. He made a lot of women of all races, feel as though his credibility was so legitimate that what he said mattered. When in actuality, for a real man would not spend his time choosing random women that he's never had a conversation with besides on his podcast or his YouTube channel. He would never spend his time finding a woman to dismantle if you're a fan of women, truly. So let me not get into that right now, because that's I don't want to go and say what I truly think of him right now, but I will tell you this. I'm fascinated by this whole situation with Kevin Samuels. I think what you're looking at is an illusion. You know, I don't care how much money he has. I don't care how many properties he owned or rented around the country. I think what you're looking at is an illusion. I don't think he's the man that he wants to be. He wanted you to think he was, right? But he was successful in creating this image of himself that everybody bought into. So whether you liked him or whether you were on the side of angry at women type situations and you agreed with them, he did his job in that way. He was able to create an illusion, and most people ate it up because most people don't do any research on anything. They just kind of turn their computer or their phone on, and they fall right into the category of people that just eat up anything that's thrown out at them. You know what I mean? I think you know, if you examine this guy a little bit closer, first of all, for him to be such a young man, I mean, anything could happen. Heart conditions, anything can happen to a person that causes them to die earlier than expected. And I'm not saying anything negative about his death. That's not even the purpose of this video. But I think when you put such negative energy, right? I'm a firm believer in the energy you put out into the universe will come back. It'll find its way back to you in some way, form. It'll get back to you, you know. So what you put out will find its way back to the host eventually. And I think when you can count, I think I'm up to 69 videos that I counted so far on Kevin Samuels, where he mentioned almost wishing death on someone else, almost wishing that they died. And basically helping to paint a picture of someone's death being in the most miserable state that they could possibly be, which is alone, without love, this and that. These are things that we all strive for. Every human nature wants you to find a companion that you can love, that you can cherish, that you can be with. I don't disagree with what he says about personal standards. Okay, that's fine. But when you start attacking women, okay, if that's your personal standard and it really is your personal standard, then what's the need to dismantle a total stranger? Why not, if you're an image consultant or whatever he refers to as himself as, then why don't you help build them up? And I guess he has stories and websites where he's done that, and he's kind of put his notch on the chain of trying to help people to be better, okay? But I think at the end of the day, it has less to do with what people the defaults that he sees in people, and it's more about the defaults that he sees in himself when he looks in the mirror. I don't think it has to do with him just being such an accomplished critique of human beings. I don't believe that that's the case at all. I think that man he hid behind a lot of things in his life. I do. I just, being a very novice student of psychology and understanding it on a very basic level, I think any psychologist would tell you that that's very obvious what's going on with that guy. I don't think he was a person who just was so great at life that now he has the currency to just critique everyone that he encounters or hears about, or that's not the case at all. So I plan on making another video about Mr. Kevin Samuels that has more to do with what I'm gonna try to find out. What I'm going to try to find out personally about what this man, what motivated this man to be such a hater of anybody's happiness, it seemed to me. Because it was always about the conflict. He always had that split screen going up with his guests. And he always wanted to make you feel and know that it was about the controversy. It was about something they were doing wrong. Because it couldn't have been him. There's nothing in his life based on him. There's nothing that he could have been doing wrong, because he was just perfect. He had his perfect tie on. He had his three-piece button-up suit on. He was fantastic. He had his rollie on. He had his you know, his bracelets, and he was G'd up. You know, his swag game was together. But I think underneath all that, just like in some of his videos, how he tried to just, you know, put women on blast and say, if you took all this hair off and you pulled your eyelashes off and all that, and he tried to basically down them for exactly what he's doing in a male version, but it was okay for him. I think when we get to the end of this, I think when we start learning more about Kevin Samuels now that he's gone, and people start coming forth with credible proof of what type of person he was, I think that a lot of the people that that sought advice from this guy will be amazed to find out that you were getting advice from someone who doesn't even, and I'm speaking mainly of men who were looking at this guy for advice. His interest, even though on the surface, because it's more of what the image that he wanted to build, even though on the surface he wanted you to believe that he was a certain character, I think that character was the polar opposite in his private life. I think when the cameras went off, when the expensive microphones were put away, when his suit was taken off, I think Kevin Samuels was a man who basically did not live what he preached. Put it like that. I'll leave it at that for now. You know, this is kind of veering off of my topic and what I like to cover in my life. I'm a professional truck driver. I'm an expert in that area. I'm not an expert on other people, so I won't claim to be. I won't make videos where I'm actually acting like I'm pontificating on Kevin Samuels and I know about him in some, you know, learned degree or learned way. I don't. But I can only tell you that it has piqued my interest. This whole Kevin Samuels thing has really piqued my interest, and I figure it's worth a little bit more investigating on my part, just for my own personal satisfaction, just so I'm not, you know, this story's not hanging in my head and I can move on to bigger and better things that have to do with life on the road, truck drivers as we know it, and keeping this great nation moving in a sound and solid direction toward economic prosperity and all that. So this is Iron Will with Big Will's Corner. Subscribe to my channel, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.